Part 2 is the sequel to the 2021 epic and follows Paul Atreides as he seeks to lead a united Arrakis in a war against the Harkonnens and the Empire. If I'm being honest, I do have a complicated history when it comes to that 2021 film. If you guys remember, back then Warner Brothers was releasing their new releases both in theaters and on HBO Max at the exact same time. And for some reason, I decided to see Dune not on the biggest screen that I possibly could find, but at home on my TV. And while I did like that first film, I'll be honest, I didn't see it as the next Star Wars as so many people were praising it to be. But a couple weeks back, they reissued that first film in preparation for this sequel. I got to see that 2021 film on IMAX for the first time, and I can honestly say I was so wrong. On the big screen, that first film is a cinematic spectacle the likes of which we rarely see. I still have some problems here and there with that first film, but overall I ended up really loving it. And considering the fact that I was already excited for Dune Part 2 even back then when I just thought the first one was okay, my anticipation for this sequel went through the roof over the past couple weeks, and thank God I can honestly say this film delivers on nearly every single thing that you could possibly want it. In terms of being a sequel, this film is fan-fucking-tastic. It takes everything that made that first film so incredible and boosts it to the next level. Aesthetically, obviously, this film puts most other blockbusters nowadays to shame. In terms of the cinematography, the score, the sound design, the effects, just the experience of watching this film in an IMAX screening was a privilege. But it wasn't just the aesthetics, they also evolved the world and the characters. Not only do we see far more of Arrakis and experience far more of the Furman culture, but we also go to other planets and see way more civilizations in this film than in the first. My favorite one absolutely being the Harkonnen homeworld, which is under a black sun, so everything in the daylight is black and white. It's not only a cool idea, but it's a beautiful visual. And the characters in this film I ended up really loving. Don't get me wrong, in the first film the characters were okay, but even as I grew to love that first film, I didn't really find myself connecting all that much to most of the characters. This film honestly changed all that. I ended up loving the majority of characters in this movie. Paul is such an interesting character because of the fact that at his heart, he doesn't want to be this messiah of the Furman that his mother is campaigning him as. All of the prophecies and miracles that end up becoming true is purely because of the fact that he's just educated in these matters. It's nothing magical or mystical. And his reluctancy towards that I found extremely interesting, especially in the last third of the film. I'll be honest, they did something with his character that in the past with other films, I've never really been a fan of, and I was really worried that would happen with this one. But thankfully, they sidestep it in a different direction. They don't change his character, but they just introduce a whole different aspect of his character that makes his leadership role more prevalent, while you can always see in his eyes and in his body language that in his heart of hearts, he rarely wants to do anything that he's doing right now, but he knows in his mind it's the only way. And just that inner conflict I found so much more interesting than anything we saw in the 2021 film. But again, everyone in this movie is fantastic. Javier Bardem as Stilgar is not only extremely interesting as the most prevalent follower of all of these prophecies, but he's also given a lot of really funny lines in this movie. I would definitely say this is a way more funny movie than the first film. Zendaya is great as Chani and has a lot of great drama with Paul in this movie, especially as you see him grow into his own as this mystical leader where in reality she loves Paul, she doesn't love the prophecy. And my god, I need to talk about Austin Butler as Fade Rotha in this movie. He killed it. Not for 1 second did I see Elvis in this movie. Not for 1 second did I see Sting in this movie. Austin Butler turns Fade Rotha into his own brand of psychotic. And in terms of my personal problems with that 2021 film, I actually found that this sequel fixed in a lot of different ways. First of all, I think the pacing of this film is way better than that first one. Because this film focuses so much more on amazing action set pieces as opposed to that first film, this one I found way more tense and way more entertaining. And that's not necessarily that first film's fault because they had to set up so much and this is the result of all of that setup being paid off. It's just something that I found and I have to give praise to, especially considering the fact that this is a nearly 3-hour long film, and despite that length, I was never bothered by it. That said, again, while this is a fantastic film, I don't think it's perfect. I don't think that it's the best film of the year, the best sci-fi movie of the past decade, like I'm sure so many trailers and advertisements are gonna say. I think it's a great film, but it definitely has flaws. For one, again, this is a very long movie, and while I wasn't bothered by the runtime of it, I could see how some people would. While I love the majority of characters and actors in this film, there are a couple outliers. Most notably, Christopher Walken as the Emperor and Florence Pugh as the Emperor's daughter. I love both of these actors individually, but in this movie, it doesn't really feel like they were given a lot to do. Neither of them have a great deal of development to their characters, and neither of them are allowed to give a lot of personality to their performances. So it just seemed like these two seemingly very important characters to this story were just sort of there. So while I can't act like this is a perfect movie by any means, as I do have my personal flaws with the film, overall, again, this is a fantastic movie. This is everything that a sci-fi epic should be, and everything that a sequel should be. It develops the world, it develops the characters, it develops the drama, and it does it all with some of the most epic filmmaking you'll see in a theater nowadays. I think Dune Part 2 is brilliant. I think it might even be slightly better than the first film, if I'm being completely honest, and I'm going to give it an A. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are the best, and don't forget to click subscribe and click that bell icon down below to stay up to date on all things movie, all things TV, all things nerd.